The phone rang exactly once before I answered it. Force of habit. 12 years in the Marines teaches you that hesitation costs lives, and phones that ring during work hours carry orders, not conversations. Captain Hayes, I said, cradling the receiver between my shoulder and ear while I continued typing my after-action report. The cursor blinked on the screen, waiting. The voice on the other end was male, measured, the kind of calm you only get from years of delivering bad news professionally. Captain Samantha Hayes? Speaking. My name is David Porter. I'm an attorney representing General James Wilson. He's, a pause, as if the next words required courage. He's dying, Captain, and he's asked to see you. I stopped typing. I think you have the wrong person, Mr. Porter. I don't know any General Wilson. He said you'd say that. The fluorescent lights hummed above me. Outside my office window at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, Marines were running PT, their cadence drifting through the afternoon heat like a familiar prayer. Everything about that moment was ordinary. The paperwork on my desk, the sound of boots on pavement, the coffee going cold in my mug. Everything except those words. He's dying. He's asked to see you. Captain Hayes? The lawyer's voice pulled me back. Are you still there? Yeah, I'm here. I rubbed my temple. Look, Mr. Porter, I appreciate the call, but there's been a mistake. I grew up in foster care. Both my parents died in a car accident when I was 3. I don't have family, and I certainly don't know any generals. Silence on the other end. Not the silence of confusion, but of someone weighing how much to say. Captain, General Wilson has information about your birth. About your mother. About why you ended up in the system. He paused. He says if you come, everything will make sense. But he doesn't have much time. My hand tightened on the receiver. How much time? Days. Maybe a week. I looked at the half-finished report on my screen. Routine training evaluation. Due Friday. Everything in my life was routine now. Morning PT, paperwork, evening chow, sleep. A predictable rhythm that had replaced the chaos of deployments. Where? I heard myself ask. Richmond, Virginia. The Wilson estate. I can arrange transportation. No. I'll drive. I needed the time. Needed to think. Text me the address. Of course. And Captain? His voice softened. Thank you. This means more to him than you know. After he hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring at nothing. Through my window, I could see the American flag snapping in the wind, its shadow stretching across the parade ground like it was trying to reach something just out of grasp. I'd spent 30 years believing I was nobody's daughter. Now a dying man I'd never met was claiming otherwise. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my base housing quarters staring at the ceiling, listening to the familiar sounds of military life settling in for the night. Distant voices, the clang of doors, someone's radio playing too loud 2 units over. My apartment was spare, functional, a couch I'd bought at a thrift store, a coffee table that doubled as a desk, walls bare except for my promotion certificates and a Marine Corps flag. No family photos because I didn't have family. No decorations because I'd learned early that anything you loved could be taken away when you moved to the next foster home. At 0200, I gave up on sleep and made coffee. In the kitchen, I pulled out the shoebox I kept on the top shelf of my closet. I'd told myself for years I didn't care what was inside, but I'd also never thrown it away. The box held the only things I had from before the foster system, a hospital bracelet with my name typed on it in faded ink, Baby Girl Hayes. A silver locket shaped like an anchor. And a photograph, creased down the middle from years of being folded and unfolded. In the photo, a man in Marine Corps dress blues held an infant. Beside him stood a woman with dark hair and a smile that looked like sunshine. On the back, in blue ink that had faded to gray, for SGH. Always safe. My initials, Samantha Grace Hayes. I'd found the photo at the bottom of a donation box at one of my foster homes when I was 8. I'd kept it because the Marine looked proud, and I'd wanted to believe someone like that could have been my father. But the state files said both my parents died when I was 3. Car accident on I-95. No other family. End of story. Except now a lawyer was telling me there was more to the story. I held the photograph up to the kitchen light, studying the man's face. Strong jaw, clear eyes, the bearing of someone who'd earned his uniform the hard way. Could this be General Wilson? My phone buzzed. A text from the lawyer with an address in Richmond and a note. He's been waiting for this day for a long time. I set the photo down and picked up my coffee mug, but my hands were shaking too badly to drink. At 0600, I was in my truck heading north on I-95, the same highway where my parents supposedly died 27 years ago. The drive to Richmond took 4 hours, but it felt longer. Every mile marker felt like a countdown to something I couldn't name, revelation or disaster or maybe both. The Wilson estate wasn't hard to find. It sat at the end of a private road lined with oak trees, the kind of place that whispered old money and older secrets. A white mansion with columns, perfectly manicured grounds, and an American flag at half-staff. Someone was already grieving. A man in a gray suit met me at the door before I could knock. Mid-50s, thinning hair, the exhausted look of someone who'd been managing a crisis for too long. Captain Hayes? He extended his hand. David Porter. Thank you for coming. I'm not promising anything, I said, shaking his hand. I'm here for answers, not a reunion. Understood. He stepped aside to let me in. Before you see him, there's something you should know. The general, he's not in good shape. The cancer is aggressive. He may not be able to talk for long. The interior of the house was museum quiet. Dark wood, thick rugs, portraits of military officers lining the walls. Each painting showed a different era of warfare, a different generation of Wilsons who'd served. We stopped in front of one painting, and my breath caught. It was me, not a likeness, not similar. Me. Marine dress blues, captain's bars, the same promotion photo I'd taken 18 months ago. Someone had commissioned an oil painting of it, complete with the small scar above my right eyebrow that I'd gotten during hand-to-hand combat training. What the hell is this? I whispered. Porter's voice was gentle. The general commissioned it last year. He said it was his daughter, and he wanted to see her the way she'd become. I stared at my own face rendered in oil and couldn't breathe. How long has he known about me? Always, Captain. He's always known. Porter led me upstairs. The second floor smelled like antiseptic and something floral, someone's attempt to mask the clinical reality of a man dying at home. A nurse nodded at us and quietly left the room. General James Wilson lay in a hospital bed positioned to face the window, where he could see the flag in his front yard. He was thin, the kind of thin that happens when illness burns through everything but will. Silver hair, weathered face, but his eyes, when they found mine, were sharp. Alert. Waiting. Samantha, he said, and his voice cracked on my name. I stood in the doorway, every instinct telling me to run. You don't get to call me that. You don't know me. I know you better than you think. He tried to sit up, failed, settled for turning his head more fully toward me. You graduated top of your OCS class. You prefer black coffee, no sugar. You run 6 miles every morning at 0530 because that's when the base is quietest. You received the Navy Cross for actions in Helmand Province that are still classified. My hands clenched into fists. Knowing facts about my service record doesn't make you my father. No, he agreed quietly. But the birth certificate downstairs does. The one that says Samantha Grace Hayes was born at Naval Hospital Camp Lejeune to James and Catherine Wilson. The one that was sealed 30 years ago to keep you alive. The room tilted. I grabbed the doorframe to steady myself. That's impossible. The state files say what I paid them to say. He coughed, a wet, rattling sound. Sit, please. Let me explain before I run out of time. I didn't sit, couldn't, but I didn't leave either. Your mother, he began, and something in his voice softened. Catherine. She was a Navy nurse. We met during a deployment to Somalia. She was kind in ways that terrified me because I'd spent my life believing kindness was weakness. He smiled faintly. She proved me wrong. If she was my mother, where is she? His smile faded. Dead. Car accident when you were 3. That part of your file is true. And you just gave me up after she died? Dumped me in foster care? No. His hand trembled on the blanket. I tried to keep you. For 6 months, I tried. But after Catherine died, the threats started. Threats? From people who wanted revenge for operations I'd led. For missions where their leaders died. His eyes closed. They couldn't touch me directly, I had too much security. But they could touch you. They made that very clear. I thought of the photograph in my pocket. Always safe. So you faked my death, I said slowly. We faked your records, made it look like you died in the same accident as your mother. Then we placed you in the foster system under a new identity. He opened his eyes again. It was supposed to be temporary. Just until the threats were neutralized. But the threats never stopped, Samantha. And by the time they did, you were 10 years old with a new life. I thought, his voice broke. I thought you were better off without me. Better off? The anger that had been simmering exploded. I grew up in 7 different foster homes. I wore second-hand clothes and ate meals wondering if it would be my last in that house before they moved me again. I joined the Marines because it was the only family that wouldn't abandon me. And you think I was better off? I watched every step, he whispered. Every report card, every award, every deployment. I had people checking on you, making sure you were safe. You had me surveilled. I laughed bitterly. That's not love. That's intelligence gathering. He was crying now, tears sliding into the creases of his weathered face. You're right. I failed you. I chose duty over fatherhood. I chose your safety over your happiness. And I've spent 30 years knowing I made the wrong choice but being too much of a coward to fix it. The monitor beside his bed beeped steadily, marking time neither of us could get back. Why now? I asked. Why call me now when you're dying? Because I'm out of time to be a coward. He reached toward the nightstand with a shaking hand. And because you deserve to know the truth before I take it to my grave. He pulled out a manila envelope, worn at the edges like it had been opened and closed 1,000 times. Everything's in here: birth certificate, your mother's letters, photos, proof that I'm not lying. He held it out. Take it. Even if you never forgive me, at least you'll know the truth. I stared at the envelope but didn't take it. Not yet, because taking it meant accepting that my entire life had been built on a lie. That every assumption I'd made about who I was and where I came from was wrong. That the loneliness I'd carried for 3 decades had a name and a face and a set of general stars. I need air, I said, and walked out before he could respond. Downstairs, I found myself standing in front of my own portrait again, staring at the woman I'd become without ever knowing who I was supposed to be. Porter appeared beside me. He commissioned 3 of these, he said quietly. 1 for each rank you achieved. Lieutenant, Captain, and 1 more. 1 more? He gestured to a covered canvas leaning against the wall. For Major. He said you'd make it before he died. He was betting on you. I couldn't look away from my own painted eyes. They looked so certain, so sure of themselves. But the real me, the one standing in this mansion surrounded by ghosts, felt like she was drowning. I can't do this, I whispered. You already are, Porter said gently. The question is whether you'll finish it. Outside, through the window, I watched the flag ripple in the afternoon breeze. And somewhere upstairs, a dying man who claimed to be my father waited to see if 30 years of silence could be forgiven in the days he had left. I drove. No destination, no plan. Just away from that house and the impossible truths it contained. The truck's engine hummed beneath me, reliable and familiar, while my mind tried to process information it had no framework for. Your father is alive. Your death was faked. You were watched for 30 years. The words looped like a broken recording. I ended up at a rest stop off I-95, the same highway where my mother supposedly died. Where I supposedly died too, according to records that had defined my entire childhood. In the truck cab, I sat with the manila envelope on the passenger seat. Porter had pressed it into my hands as I left, his expression somewhere between pity and hope. Read it when you're ready, he'd said. No timeline, no pressure, but the envelope felt like it was burning through the seat. At 1,900 hours, as the sun began its descent and painted the parking lot in orange and gold, I finally opened it. Inside, documents organized with military precision. Of course they were. First item, a birth certificate. North Carolina State Vital Records seal embossed at the top. Samantha Grace Wilson, born 0342 hours, Naval Hospital Camp Lejeune. Mother, Catherine Ann Wilson. Father, James Robert Wilson, Major, USMC. Wilson, not Hayes. My hands shook as I set it aside and picked up the next document. A photograph, the same one I'd kept in my shoebox, but this was the original. Crisper, unfaded. On the back, the same handwriting, for SGH. Always safe. Love, Dad. Dad. The word looked foreign, like a language I'd never learned to speak. Next came a stack of letters, maybe 30 of them, organized by year. Each sealed in its own envelope, each addressed to me, none ever sent. I opened one at random. The date stamp read September 2003, I would have been 10. Samantha, today you started 4th grade. I saw your school photo in the county records database. You lost your front tooth. Your foster mother said you were embarrassed about it, but I think that gap-toothed smile is the bravest thing I've seen in a decade of combat. I wanted to call the school, wanted to tell them to tell you that you're beautiful. That tooth gaps mean you're growing, becoming who you're meant to be. But I can't. The threats against your life are still active. 3 attempts intercepted this year alone. So instead, I'm writing letters I'll never send and hoping that someday, somehow, you'll know you were loved. Even in the silence. Especially in the silence. JW. I set it down with trembling hands and opened another. This one from 2009. Samantha, you enlisted today. I watched from the back of the processing center, wearing civilian clothes, sunglasses, trying to be invisible. When you raised your right hand and took the oath, I saw your mother in you. The set of your jaw when you're determined. The way you stand like you're ready to face whatever comes. I wanted to walk up and tell you I was proud. That joining the Marines was the bravest thing you could do. But I stayed in the shadows because that's where I've always been in your life, watching from a distance, protecting you from threats you don't know exist. Your recruiter asked if you had family attending. You said no, and I died a little, standing 10 feet away, knowing I was the reason you were alone. JW. Letter after letter, year after year. My entire life documented by a man I'd never known was there. The last envelope was different. Heavier paper, more recent postmark. Dated 2 months ago. Samantha. The doctors say I have weeks, maybe months. Cancer. Aggressive. Fitting, I suppose. I've spent my life being aggressive, and now it's killing me. I've written you hundreds of letters over 30 years. Never sent a single one because I told myself you were safer not knowing. But safety and happiness aren't the same thing, and I robbed you of both. I'm asking David Porter to call you. Not because I deserve forgiveness, I don't. But because you deserve the truth. You deserve to know that every medal you earned, every commendation, every deployment. I was there, not in person, but in every way I could be from the shadows. If you're reading this, you came. That's more than I had any right to hope for. There's a trust fund. Documents are with Porter. It's not much, just my pension in the house. Use it however you want. Help other foster kids. Burn it. I don't care. It's yours. What I do care about is that you know this. You were never unwanted. You were never a burden. You were the best thing your mother and I ever created, and watching you grow into the Marine you are today has been the greatest honor of my life. I failed you as a father. But I never stopped loving you as one. Semper Fi, daughter. General James Wilson. I sat in that truck as twilight turned to darkness, reading and rereading those letters until the words blurred. A family of 4 pulled into the parking spot beside me, kids arguing in the back seat, parents looking exhausted but patient. Normal. The kind of normal I'd never had. My phone buzzed. Porter. He's asking for you. No pressure. Just wanted you to know. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I started the truck and drove back toward Richmond. The nurse met me at the door. He's sleeping, but you can sit with him if you'd like. The bedroom was darker now, lit only by the soft glow of medical equipment and a lamp in the corner. Wilson, I couldn't call him Dad, not yet, lay exactly as I'd left him, but somehow smaller. Frailer. I pulled a chair close to the bed and sat. For a long time, I just watched him breathe. Each inhale and exhale a small battle won. I read the letters, I said quietly, not sure if he could hear me. All of them. His eyes opened slowly, focusing on me with effort. And I don't know what to feel. I'm angry. I'm sad. My voice cracked. I'm so goddamn tired of being alone. He reached for my hand with his, the movement slow and deliberate. His skin was paper thin, bones too close to the surface. You were never alone, he whispered. I was always there. That's not the same thing. I know. His grip tightened slightly. I know it's not, but it's all I could give you. We sat like that for a while, his hand in mine, the monitor beeping its steady rhythm. Tell me about her, I said finally. About my mother. His face softened, years falling away for just a moment. Catherine. She was a force of nature disguised as a nurse. Volunteered for every dangerous deployment. Patched up Marines under fire like it was just another Tuesday. He smiled faintly. I was a major then, thought I was tough. She took one look at me after I got hit with shrapnel and said, "Stop being dramatic. I've seen worse." Despite everything, I felt my lips twitch toward a smile. She made me laugh, he continued. Made me remember there was more to life than missions and medals. When you were born, she held you up and said, "This one's going to be trouble. Look at that face, she's already planning something." Was she right? About you being trouble? He chuckled, then coughed. Oh yes. You tried to escape your crib at 6 months. Your mother said it was a sign you'd be a Marine. She was right. She usually was. His expression darkened. The accident. I was deployed. Got the call in the middle of a briefing. By the time I made it home, you were already in emergency foster care, and the threats had started. Men I'd helped put away had people on the outside. They found out about Catherine. Found out about you. So you made me disappear. I made you safe. His hand trembled in mine. Or at least I tried to. A CIA contact helped falsify the records. Made it look like you died too. Placed you in the system under a new name. Said it was temporary, just until we neutralized the threats. But you never brought me back. He closed his eyes. By the time it was safe, you were 10 years old. Settled in a foster home in Raleigh. The family was good to you, I made sure of that. You had friends, school, stability. And I thought maybe you were better off believing I was dead than learning your father chose duty over raising you. That wasn't your choice to make. I know. Tears slipped from the corners of his eyes. God help me, I know. The nurse appeared in the doorway, checking her watch. General, you need to rest. He ignored her, eyes fixed on me. Will you come back tomorrow? I should have said no. Should have walked out and never returned. But I heard myself say, yeah, I'll come back. His relief was visible, his whole body relaxing into the pillows. Thank you. I spent that night in a hotel near the estate, unable to face the drive back to Lejeune. Sleep came in fragments, interrupted by dreams of foster homes and a man in uniform watching from shadows. At 0530, I woke from habit and went for a run. 6 miles through Richmond's empty streets, trying to outrun thoughts that moved faster than my feet. When I returned to the estate at 0900, Porter met me with coffee and a folder. The general wanted you to have these, he said, handing me the folder. His service records, deployments, commendations. He said you should know what he was doing all those years. Inside were decades of classified operations, redacted mission reports, citations for valor. Somalia, Iraq, Afghanistan, operations with no names in countries officially denied. One document stopped me cold, an after-action report from 2009, my first deployment. Someone had annotated it in pencil. Daughter's platoon, Al Anbar province. Recommend additional air support for her sector. She won't ask for it, too much pride, but she needs it. In the margin. Request approved. Support deployed. He interfered with my deployment? Porter shook his head. He ensured you came home. There's a difference. I flipped through more reports. More notes in the margins. Recommendations for additional resources. Quiet interventions that changed outcomes without anyone knowing. How many times? Every deployment, Porter said quietly. He called it distant overwatch. Made sure you had what you needed without compromising your command or your dignity. I sat down heavily. I thought I earned those resources. You did. He just made sure the bureaucracy didn't get in your way. Upstairs, Wilson was awake, sitting up slightly, looking stronger than yesterday. The nurse said he'd had a good night. You read the service records, he said when he saw my face. You manipulated my deployments. I ensured you survived them. There's a difference. Stop saying that. I set the folder down harder than necessary. You don't get to rewrite history. You don't get to pretend watching from a distance was the same as being there. You're right. I don't. He met my eyes steadily. I can't change what I did or didn't do. But I can tell you why. I don't want reasons. My voice broke. I want to know why you didn't think I deserved to know the truth. Because I was a coward. Simple. Direct. I told myself it was about your safety, about protecting you from threats. But the truth is, I was afraid. Afraid you'd hate me. Afraid you'd reject me. Afraid that you'd grown into someone who didn't need a father anymore. I've never had a father, I said quietly. So you were right about that part. The words landed like bullets. I watched them hit, watched him absorb the impact. Then let me be one now, he whispered. For however many days I have left. Let me try. I stayed. Not because I forgave him. Not because the letters or the explanations or the tears had erased 30 years of abandonment. I stayed because some part of me, the part that used to dream about parents coming to rescue me from foster care, needed to know what having a father felt like. Even if it was just for a few days. Even if it hurt. Over the next week, General James Wilson taught me things I'd never known. He taught me that my mother had wanted to name me Catherine, but he'd insisted on Samantha because it meant listener, and he'd hoped I'd listen to wisdom better than he had. He taught me that I had a grandmother still alive in Florida, his mother, who'd been told I died and never recovered from the grief. He taught me that the anchor locket I'd kept for years had been Catherine's, a gift from her Navy nurse graduation, passed to me the day I was born. And slowly, in the spaces between medical procedures and pain medication, he taught me what it meant to have someone who'd carried you in their heart even when they couldn't carry you in their arms. On day 5, he asked me about Afghanistan. About the mission that earned me the Navy Cross. Classified, I said automatically. I have the clearance. And the time. A weak smile. Humor a dying man. So I told him. About the ambush. About the 23 hours we held that position with no support. About the decision I made to call an artillery danger close because it was the only way to save my Marines. When I finished, he was crying again. Your mother would be so proud, he whispered. You saved them. All of them. Most of them. I lost 3. You remember their names. Always. That's how I know you're a good officer. The best ones never forget. On day 7, I met with his lawyer to discuss the estate. There's the house, Porter explained. His pension, which will transfer to you. And this. He slid a document across the table. The Wilson Foundation for Military Orphans. He started it 5 years ago, Porter continued. Scholarships for foster children who want to join the military. It's funded through his pension and some investments. He wanted you to run it. I stared at the paperwork. He created a foundation for kids like me? He created it for you. To help the children he couldn't help when you needed it. That night, I sat with Wilson and asked the question I'd been avoiding. Why didn't you ever try to contact me? Even once? He was quiet for a long time. I did. Once. When? Your high school graduation. I was there. Back row, civilian clothes. I watched you walk across that stage, salute the flag. The only graduate who did. And I almost walked up to you afterward. Why didn't you? Because you looked happy. You looked strong. And I was afraid that seeing me would break something in you that I had no right to fix. He looked at me. Was I wrong? I thought about that girl I'd been. 18, heading to boot camp, carrying nothing but a duffel bag and a photograph of a Marine she thought was dead. Yeah, I said quietly. You were wrong. He nodded, accepting the judgment. I know that now. On day 9, the doctors said it was close. The cancer had spread faster than expected. Days, maybe hours. I called my command and requested emergency leave extension. They approved without question. Someone had already called ahead, explained the situation. I suspected Porter. That night, I didn't leave the estate. I slept in the chair beside Wilson's bed, watching the monitors, listening to his breathing grow shallower. At 03:00, he woke suddenly, clear-eyed despite the morphine. Samantha, I'm here. The portrait. The one of you as Major. He gestured weakly toward the hallway. I want to see it. You haven't finished it yet. No, but you will. I know you will. He smiled. Promise me something. What? Promise me you'll help those kids. The ones in the system. The ones who think nobody wants them. I promise. And promise me. His voice faded, came back. Promise me you'll tell them that sometimes people love you even when they can't show it. That silence doesn't always mean absence. My throat closed around words I couldn't say. I need you to know, he continued, gripping my hand with surprising strength, that watching you become who you are has been the greatest privilege of my life. I failed you as a father, but I never stopped being proud to call you my daughter. I know, I managed. I read the letters. Did you read the last one? The one in the envelope? Yes. No. The one I wrote yesterday. Porter has it. At 0437 hours, his breathing changed. Became irregular, shallow. The nurse appeared, checked monitors, gave me a look that said it's time. I held his hand and did the only thing I could think to do. I saluted. A proper military salute, sitting beside his deathbed, giving him the honor he'd spent his life earning and never asking for. His eyes met mine. He tried to return it, hand trembling halfway to his forehead. Then his hand fell, his eyes closed, and at 0441 hours, General James Wilson died. The monitor's flat tone filled the room. The nurse called the time, checked for pulse, began the official procedures. And I sat there, holding the hand of a father I'd known for 9 days and missed for 30 years. Porter found me an hour later, still sitting beside the body. Captain Hayes, he said gently. There's something he wanted me to give you. After. He handed me an envelope, unsealed this time. Inside, a single sheet of paper. Samantha, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Good. I've been dying for months and I'm tired of it. I know 9 days isn't enough. I know nothing I did or said can make up for the 30 years I stole from us. But I hope, I pray, that you'll remember me not as the man who abandoned you, but as the man who never stopped watching over you. You asked why I didn't contact you sooner. The truth is, I was waiting to be worthy. Waiting to become the kind of father you deserved. But worthiness is a battlefield I never won. So instead, I'm leaving you with this. You owe me nothing. Not forgiveness, not grief, not even memory. But I'm asking you to take what I'm leaving, the foundation, the money, the name, and use it to help the kids who are where you were. Alone. Scared. Believing nobody cares. Show them that silence doesn't mean absence. That sometimes the people who love you most are the ones watching from the shadows, making sure you're safe even when you can't see them. I loved your mother. I love you. And I'm sorry I was never brave enough to say it while I was alive. Semper Fidelis, daughter. Your father. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my pocket next to the first photograph. Captain? Porter's voice. The funeral is in 3 days. Arlington. Full military honors. He wanted you to be there, but he understood if you couldn't. I'll be there, I heard myself say. Because despite everything, the abandonment, the lies, the years of silence, he'd been my father. And Marines don't leave anyone behind. Even the ghosts.